Hi, and welcome to this week's Preps Preview. I'm Justin Conn. This is Scott Richey. Talking about playoffs now, obviously, with we're a week into the playoffs, and Scott and I kind of discussed the playoffs a little bit before we came in here today, and I don't think there was a lot that surprised us. I think there were a couple of games, of course, we missed on Pick'em, but I don't think any of those games were games that shocked us with the results. So we're going to kind of talk a little bit about what stood out most in the first week of the playoffs for each of us. I'll start out, Argenta-Orienta beat Greenfield. They really pulled away in the fourth quarter of that game, kind of played like they were capable of playing in the fourth quarter. There were times in the first half where they just didn't play as well as they were capable of, making mistakes that I think have plagued this team a little bit over the course of the season, and even last year as well. When you look back at their playoff loss to Camp Point Central last year, there were a lot of plays where they would break off a big play, but it would be brought back by a penalty, or they would make a big defensive stop and then jump off sides in the next play. I think there was a lot of that last year. And a little bit of that in the Greenfield game, too. I know they had a couple big plays brought back. And I wasn't at the game. I listened to it on the radio with Eric Lee's call. But, I found myself frustrated for Argenta at times in that game. And I before the playoffs started, I picked Argenta to make it to the quarterfinals. But they can't do that stuff against Downs Tri-Valley this Saturday and beat them. I think they're capable of playing with and even beating Tri-Valley. But that stuff's got to go. They have to play a clean game, no silly mistakes. They have an explosive offense. Just let it be explosive. Get out there and get that done, and just cut out some of the penalties. I think they'll be fine. But that was really kind of what stood out to me, is just a team like Argenta who can really has the talent to do something. They got to get out of their own way a little bit, I guess, is kind of what stood out to me from that game.
What stood out for me was KZ Westfield, not necessarily their big win over Villa Grove. That I figured was going to happen, but just how they did it. Villa Grove ran a 4-3 defense, kind of at a spy on Nico Stupina the whole game, and he did not run the ball very well. He had 12 yards on 13 carries, although he did score a touchdown. And he's been able to beat teams on the ground all season, and he had to throw the ball a little more, and he showed that just because he doesn't do it regularly doesn't mean he's not a serious threat. He completed 11 of 15 passes, 243 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So, Villa Grove went into the game thinking, we stop, Stupina on the ground, and, maybe we have a chance, and he tore them apart, through the air. And just shows that, you're going to have to, I'm not sure what you can do, to stop him at this point. But I think even also, along with that, his main target was a 6'4" sophomore, Corey Carver. He had 7 catches for 125 yards and 4 of the 5 touchdowns. He's the younger brother of Colin Carver, of track and football, fame, I guess, at KZ. He's in the state finals in the hurdles, I think, every year.
He was a state champion as a senior as well, so yeah.
And fast, very fast. And from what little we know of little brother, because KZ coach Tim Sullivan has not pushed him at all, but looks like he's maybe built in the same mode, just taller. So, a great weapon in the passing game if KZ needs it. And, they showed that, they can do it if Stupina's not, running the ball very much. And even, with him, being held on the ground, Austin Glidewell rushed for 130-some yards too. So they're going to be, that KZ juggernaut in the playoffs.
I think that it's a little scary going forward for their opponents that, I think the last few years, last 3, even last year with Stupina's, as a junior, and the 3 years maybe before that, they had a great passing game there for a little bit, but it's been more of a run-based offense these last 4 years or so. I think you could do that against them. You could say, hey, pass it on us, and Casey would just kind of, take, their small chunks of yards and beat you and play defense. But having that, that facet, being able to pass the ball like Stupina can, and having a receiver. It's so funny to talk about Carver now, because at the start of or even it was over the summer, I talked to Jim Sullivan, and Carver's name kind of came up, and then he said, don't write anything about him, though. Don't just keep him. And I think they were just waiting, for this moment to say, okay, yeah, we have this guy.
Well, the secret's out now.
Yeah, so but that is, that gives them, another level of another way to beat you, and that's the last thing Casey really needed, was another way to beat you. So, yeah, I think that's scary for opponents going forward. And speaking of going forward, we're going to talk about this week's playoff games a little bit. We only have 6 games this week, which is, I don't know, for me, it just feels so crazy because we're so used to having so many games every week. I think the game I'm most looking forward to out of this week's slate is Cerro Gordo at Athens. I think Cerro Gordo wins the game. I'm not necessarily saying that. I think that's a game where they go in and they're going to be in trouble against Athens. We saw Nokomis' Austin Chauncey run for about 250 against them, and he's a great running back. Well, Cerro Gordo has two of those, so I think they're going to go in and run the ball on them and do what they usually do. But I just really can't wait to see Cerro Gordo get to get that second round win, get to the quarterfinals. I mean, this is a team that's won, I've lost count how many straight regular season games it was now, but I mean, to lose in the second round last year, I thought was a little bit of a disappointment, but probably expected from a team that hasn't really been there. So it'd be nice to see them take at least one more step and maybe more. I think they're capable of doing that, this year, and that would be to win this game, a playoff game on the road, pretty tough place to play in Athens. I think that would be that would really be a crowning achievement for a program that's been one of the best in our area the last 2 years.
Yeah, and Athens had trouble with Chauncey. When he got around in, he was able to use the speed, and he's a pretty big kid too, and so he was busting up the middle. And Cerro Gordo has speed to the outside in Isbell, and D Woods is even bigger than Austin Chauncey, and a lot of teams need 3 or 4 defenders to bring him down. So that I think that plays well into Cerro Gordo's favor. A game I'm kind of interested in is just another one of those sneak peek into Oka 2.0. Got Monticello and St. Joseph Ogden, and with 5 of the 6 teams and then the new Oka making the playoffs, it just shows how much quality there's going to be in the conference next year. And Monticello and St. Thomas More showed that last week in the first round of the playoffs. It was a hard fought game. Kind of Monticello has maybe put the trademark on winning ugly this year. But I think they'll have another chance to, kind of show what their nasty defense can do to a team that they're going to play on a regular basis from now on. St. Joe is won some pretty good games. They beat St. Thomas More. I think their losses came to, I know Clifton Central for sure, who was in the 2A playoffs. They have and have had a pretty good team in the last few years. Dick Duvall runs a pretty tight ship over there. But Monticello with Dylan Isley running the ball pretty well still, and their defense, which just does not let teams get going any way they choose. I think it should be for an interesting matchup, and just another chance to see what kind of football we can expect the next however many years this version of the OCAL lasts.
I think Monticello, what they're really good at is getting teams to play. They make teams play ugly, and so when both teams are playing ugly, Monticello gives itself a chance, and I think that's really been the key for the Sages this year. Want to talk about some teams that we think maybe can pull an upset. There's only a few choices here. A lot of these are pretty evenly matched games, but Scott, looking at our slate of 6 games, what team do you think has the best chance of pulling an upset?
I think probably the best chance is Argenta against Tri-Valley. Argenta, like you said, has the potential for just big play after big play on offense. What's going to probably be the deciding factor is how good their defense is, because Tri-Valley averages about 42 points a game this year, put up 56 in the first half last week against Whitehall North Green. So they have that same big play potential. Argenta just really has to focus in and try and shut them down, and they have some pretty tough defensive players. Nathan Ginsel, I think at linebacker, he's one of their leading tacklers. Getting Gage Eller back in the secondary helps. He's a big physical, defensive back, and it'll be a real test for them, because they've kind of given up some plays of big plays themselves on defense, and still got the wins in those games, but they really probably need to tighten up this week for sure to try and get that upset.
And Argenta has been a lot better on defense than they were last year. I think that's been probably their biggest improvement. So I think they can give themselves a chance with that defense. For me, I'm going to go with Robinson against Greenville. Robinson got their first playoff win since 2000 last week against Anna Jonesboro. And 2 years ago, they played Greenville in the first round, and that game was close. It came down to the fourth quarter. Greenville pulled away, won 39-29 in the fourth, but Greenville sort of has a history of they can score, but when they get in the playoffs, people score on them. And I think that Robinson, their style can give Greenville a little bit of trouble. They're a physical team, and I don't think Greenville necessarily likes that. I think that when Payne has been at their best the last few years, that when they've had a really physical team, they've given Greenville trouble. So I like Robinson in this one. I don't know if they win this one, but I think this is going to be one of the better games of our slate of 6, and I think they have a fighting chance against a Greenville team that definitely has the advantage with experience in the playoffs. I mean, they're there every year and making runs in the playoffs. But I think Robinson can hang with them, and maybe if the ball, if they get some balls to fall right, they can win that game. And one other game we didn't talk about was Maroa Forsyth at Arthur Lovington at Hammond. I like Arthur's team. I do think, though, that they have not seen anything like what Maroa does on their schedule. They haven't seen that. So I think that gives it's tough to show that in practice. It's tough to simulate that in practice. And if you haven't seen it, and I think that's what happened to Triopia last year when Maroa played them in the semifinals. A quality team, a lot of good athletes. They just hadn't seen that style and that the way that Maroa can execute it. And I just think that is going to cause some trouble for Arthur.
I mean, you look at some the better teams that Arthur has faced this year. Cerro Gordo, they can throw the ball a little bit if they want to. Cold Lake and Surfers, definitely capable. But against Arthur, they toned it back even more so, and just run, and that was everybody. And so that's definitely not going to be Maroa's game plan. And also Villa Grove, last year was all Ryan Pierce in the run game. This year is more it kind of went to the quarterback running the ball a lot, which Maroa will do. With Jack Hockaday, he'll pull down and run. If he has the open avenues. But they haven't really seen a team that's going to throw the ball 60% of the time. And they have some athletes in the secondary. Tyler Schuring, had a pick last week in their playoff game, where he was kind of the recipient of the fade route to the corner of the end zone instead of the wide receiver against Salt Fork. But no team really so far has found 4 defensive backs to cover all of Maroa's wide receivers.
Yeah, and Maroa was sloppy against Tuscola. That was probably the worst game I've seen the Trojans play since State a couple of years ago against Sterling Newman. But I think there was definitely a feel of let's get this over with. Hockaday's ankle's still a little shaky. Let's just get through this game. We've already beaten Tuscola, so that there was definitely that sort of maybe attitude there. It was so easy the first time that it should be easy again. And I think they did a lot of things to beat themselves at times in that game. They gave Tuscola a chance all by themselves to score towards the end of the half, basically by muffing a punt, and then also they had a bad penalty, a unsportsmanlike penalty that basically gave Tuscola the ball near the goal line. Drew Frederickson picked off a pass at the end of that drive that was Tuscola's best chance to score, but the Warriors never moved the ball at all against Maroa. So I think that they're okay. I think anybody who's the last couple of games where they've been a little shaky, I think that fans have a tendency to panic a little bit. I don't think there's any reason to panic there for Maroa.
Well, and I mean, you say it was the sloppiest you've seen them play in a long time. They still won 38-2. So yeah. I think storm clouds aren't moving in Maroa. They should be all right.
Yeah, exactly. So like I said, 6 or 8 games this week. Hopefully we have some plenty to talk about still next week with some teams still alive in the playoffs. You can, of course, check us out at hrpreps.com, at hrpreps on Twitter. We're on Facebook as well, so and also in the print product of the newspaper. So make sure you take a look at all of that, and we'll see you out there.